Welcome to the Histories of Northamptonshire podcast series, and this episode number 87. Recorded on location, each episode tells the story of one of the many and varied objects which are the focus of the exhibition A History of Northamptonshire in 100 Objects. The exhibition runs at the Northampton Museum and Art Gallery between the 20th of September 2025 and February 2026. Selected by local individuals, heritage groups and the museum's own curators, each object tells a different story from the county's past. And so, to our guest for this episode.
I'm Jane DeMay and I'm here from Rushden Historical Transport Society, but particularly Rushden Transport Museum.
Talk about Northamptonshire, and before very much time has elapsed, we're talking about boots, and you're about to do exactly that. You've got a very particular set of boots in the exhibition. Tell me about them, please.
We thought, well, what's a good example for representing Northamptonshire, and what's better than a boot? Rushden was very detailed in boots and shoes, so we were lucky enough to have a pair of Drayman's boots. We knew where they came from, we knew who owned them. Drays were the mode of transport for getting goods from A to B. And when the railways were developed, across the country in fact, they became one of the biggest dray operators. So it seemed the ideal object.
Drayman's boots are entirely appropriate towards transport because drays were originally horse-drawn. Drays then ended up becoming lorries, and the individual who owned these boots, as I understand it, experienced both forms of transport.
Yes, indeed he did. His name was Arthur Seward. He didn't live in Northamptonshire to start with. He lived in Leighton Bromswold, over in the Huntingdonshire border. We have this lovely photo of him and his horse. Everybody loves a horse, don't they? Whereas not everybody loves a mechanical object. My heart was with the horse, and so therefore the Drayman also was with my heart.
And yet these boots were used, whether it was horse-drawn transport
Absolutely.
or mechanised transport. You said they're just an ordinary pair of boots. But is that really the case? I mean, these are hobnail boots. These are heavy boots.
They're fantastic, aren't they? I mean, when you look at them more clearly, they've got so much to show. They're worn out. They've had a lot of wear. They're hard-working boots. They were made by C&E Lewis, which is a grand Northamptonshire boot manufacturer. So that gave a stronger link. They also had the arrow on that shows that they were the War Department or a government issue. And then they had what I think is a date of 1941, which would take it towards the end of Arthur's working life. He died in 1954.
Jane, we have the pair of boots worn by somebody who would have been involved in effectively heavy haulage. What would he have been hauling on his dray, be that horse-drawn or mechanised?
Well, a drayman in Rushden definitely would have been moving leather and boots and shoes. I mean, we've got photographs that show stacked high on these drays and these horses that pulled them. It was for the shoe factories that the railway was put there in the first place. They channelled Midland Railway to build the railway, basically. And so the railway came to Rushden and Higham, opening it up to the world and opening up the boot industry to the world.
So it's entirely possible that a pair of boots made in Northamptonshire would have been, in part at least, responsible for the transport of other pairs of boots to far-flung corners of the world, perhaps.
Absolutely possible, yes, I should think that's certain.
What do they say about the man who wore them? Did he look after the boots? Is there an indication that they were cared for? Because in many ways they were a tool of his trade.
Absolutely. I don't think they were particularly looked after as such. They'd have to be looked after in terms of they'd have to polish them to keep them sort of waterproof and sort of roadworthy, if you like. But it's more the wear and tear that I like. That just shows that it's hard work. He was a drayman. He worked hard with the horses. He worked hard later on with the lorries, shunting goods backwards and forwards from Kettering Station, which I know isn't Rushden Station, but we have a strong connection with dray horses because we did have a stables like most of the LMS stations at the time. So,
you mentioned that the boots have got the arrow for the War Office, and a lot of objects that still exist to this day have got that famous arrow which marks out the War Office and service. That sense of service, these boots have seen many lives, or at least more than two, because they'll have seen war service, and possibly on the feet of Arthur, possibly not on the feet of Arthur. Are we able to tell that? Presumably
I don't know,
not.
because I asked my husband, I said, would war boots go to the railways, because railways were, a distinct job in the war. They were very particular and very, very important for the war effort. So I don't know personally if they were actually issued as part of the war effort or whether we got them second-hand or where they came from. The other connection I've got with the war, and I know it's not the same war because it would have been far earlier, was the First World War, because I know that Arthur was in the First World War. Even if he didn't work in the Second World War in that respect, there's still that connection. And I like to think of it as, he's just an ordinary chap who's done his bit for this country and for Northamptonshire.
So in terms of the boots themselves, hard-wearing, an early version of a safety boot, because in this day and age, steel cap boots are very commonplace. These are hobnail boots, not safety steel cap boots.
No, they're quite firm on top. I didn't actually look to see if they've got some sort of cap on them, but the thing I like about them is the heel, which it looks like a horseshoe at the back. And that is really well worn, so it's obviously done either a lot of marching or a lot of work.
But perhaps protecting Arthur's feet from a stray hoof or two.
Absolutely, yeah, sure.
What's your personal reaction to the boots? They're very personal things, what we wear on our feet. They are sometimes style statements about the person. They're sometimes purely functional. Sometimes they're a combination of two. Sometimes they're deliberately outlandish. We all take wearing of footwear for granted. What's your feeling about this particular pair?
I like practical things, and to me they just speak of practicality because they're well made, strongly made, reinforced. They've got signs of the hobnails actually coming out and or wearing off or being knocked off, and I'm sure you probably could actually get them repaired if you had the money and the wherewithal to do it.
They do say that if you look after them, they'll last a lifetime.
Yes.
And they've outlasted Arthur.
Well, we've still got them, and it's a miracle, really. I mean, all the things to do with the Dray is, to my mind, so rare. We're very lucky. We've got his hat as well, but it might not have meant quite so much to most people, I think.
You've referenced mechanisation, moving across from heavy goods being pulled by horses to instead being driven by a mechanised lorry. You've talked about a man who wasn't perhaps born in Northamptonshire but came to work in Northamptonshire, and you've referenced an industry for which Northamptonshire is world famous, and there are other items of footwear within this particular exhibition. Why should this pair be part of the Histories of Northamptonshire in 100 Objects?
Well, I think you can't get very far in history without the ordinary person, and they're an ordinary boot. Okay, they're brilliant, they're hobnail boots, and they're special, and they're particularly to this person. But he was an ordinary chap. He worked hard all his life, like many other thousands of people. And he was wearing boots that were made by many thousands of workers producing boots for Northamptonshire. So, in a way, it is the history of Northamptonshire, at least in the latter part, from the industrial times, in a nutshell. So why not have it in the exhibition?
Jane, it's been lovely to talk to you. Thank you for telling me the story, not only of the boots, but of their wearer as well, and what they mean to this county. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John.
Thank you for listening to this Histories of Northamptonshire podcast. If you would like to find out more about the objects or listen to other episodes in the series, go to www.northamptonmuseums.com. Alternatively, you can visit the Northampton Museum and Art Gallery, where you can see the A History of Northamptonshire in 100 Objects exhibition for yourself. The Histories of Northamptonshire project is funded by Arts Council England as part of the National Portfolio Programme.